Hello, I'm doing a movie review, and this is actually a movie I intended on reviewing on Christmas, but as you can see, it's now well past New Year's, so Merry Late Christmas. But the movie I want to review is A Carol for Another Christmas. Now, this is a 1964 made-for-TV movie, which was directed by Joseph Mankiewicz and written by Rod Serling, the same Rod Serling who wrote things like Requiem for a Heavyweight and the original Planet of the Apes, and perhaps he's best known as the creator of The Twilight Zone, which is arguably the greatest anthology series ever made. And this is an updated retelling of the classic Charles Dickens novel, A Christmas Carol. Now, A Carol for Another Christmas was made as what was intended to be a series of television dramas that were meant to educate people not just on global politics, but also on the functions of the UN, and a lot of people at the time accused the film of basically being a propaganda piece for the UN. Now, I'm not going to go into whether I think it is or not, but I do think the film was coming from a genuine place on Rod Serling's part, because if you look at the Twilight Zone episodes he wrote, a lot of them were highly political. And what I saw in this movie was not necessarily a film about how the United Nations could solve all the world's problems, but rather a really powerful anti-war film just told through the lens of the Charles Dickens story. And I'm not going to say the movie isn't preachy or isn't heavy-handed, it is, but Rod Serling was one of those writers where he could be preachy yet still be really good, because he was a damn good writer. He was the kind of writer that I wish I could be as talented as he was, and he's the kind of writer that so many people working in movies and television today wish they were. Now, the plot of A Carol for Another Christmas is it's set on Christmas Eve and follows a man named Daniel Grudge, who is a very angry, bitter man, and he has been ever since his son died on Christmas Eve during World War II. He also has a very conservative, very isolationist mindset. He doesn't feel that the US should get involved in foreign affairs, and to a certain extent I can understand that mindset, especially with things like war and conflict, like how much do you want to risk the lives of American soldiers, and you can also understand his mindset given what happened to his son. But he also doesn't feel that we should get involved in any foreign affairs, even humanitarian aid or cultural exchanges or education. He has a very, we should stick to our side of the fence, they should stick to their side of the fence mentality. At the same time, he's very pro-nuke and feels that nuclear weapons are the ultimate deterrence of war. Whereas Daniel's nephew, who's very liberal-minded, argues that not talking to the other side is what could lead to conflict. But that night he's visited by the ghost of Christmas past, showing him a Christmas Eve during World War I, showing him the bodies of soldiers killed during the war. Then he shows him the Christmas Eve immediately following the end of World War II, showing him Hiroshima during that Christmas Eve. And then he meets the ghost of Christmas present, who shows him the refugees of current wars. And then he meets the ghost of Christmas future, who shows him a possible post-apocalyptic future where war has led to nuclear conflict. In the film, Sterling Hayden plays Daniel Grudge, who is the stand-in for Ebenezer Scrooge. Now, unlike the original Charles Dickens story, which was very much a character study on Ebenezer Scrooge, this is less of a character study on Daniel Grudge. Rather, it's a story about all of us. It's a story about the world as a whole, and Daniel Grudge is really just a cipher for that isolationist mindset that the movie argues is actually what could lead us to conflict, more so than simply trying to talk to the other side. Now, I'm not saying where I stand on that one way or the other. I try to keep my personal politics to myself, but that is what the movie is arguing.
I'm here about one of your causes. What about Jack Harris?
Harris? Jack Harris? I don't know the fellow.
Professor John Harris? You know him.
Look, Fred, we usually wind up our little discussions yelling at each other. Now let's get a quiet start this time, all right?
Jack just called me. The University Board of Trustees canceled his credentials for the Cultural Exchange Program.
Ah, yes, that Harris. Yes, I heard that decision.
It was your decision.
You just said it was the trustees. I'm not even on the board.
The words were theirs, but the voice belonged to a high-powered ventriloquist named Daniel Grudge. You sit here at that desk, throw your voice through a telephone, everybody jumps. Bankers, politicians, newspapers, universities.
Coffee is cold. Now, why should a little thing like this sit so heavily in your tender tummy, Britt?
Little thing. Uncle Dan, you know what this project has meant to all of us on the faculty, to the whole university. Everything from the raising of our own pedagogical standards to international recognition to... We've worked on it for an entire year. It's been cleared by Washington, cleared by the other end, and now you come along to dump it all. Why? Why should you object if one of our professors spends a year studying and teaching abroad?
Yes, abroad. Poland, wasn't it? Your Professor Harris was to spend a year in Poland at the University of Krakow, was it not?
Stop asking me questions you know the answer to.
You care for a drink?
No, thanks.
And in exchange for our Professor Harris, the University of Krakow in Poland would send to our university one of their boys, whose name, even if I knew what it was, is probably unpronounceable.
Korzeniowski. It's really quite easily pronounced.
And that's what's known these days as a cultural exchange. You know, Fred, for a fairly talented professor of history, you seem to be a little naive as to the current political climate of the native country of this professor, whatever his name is.
Are you serious?
Stop asking me questions you know the answers to, nephew.
Do you know what he teaches? Do you know what Korzeniowski and Harris both teach? 18th century European literature. What's that got to do with politics?
I don't know, and I'm not interested in finding out. Get smart, boy. We've been digging his kind out of the woodwork for years. You don't really expect me to be a party to inviting one of them in here now, do you? No. Now, he stays on his side of the fence and Harris stays on ours. Get used to the idea.
When you finally go, that'll be your epitaph, won't it? Here lies Daniel Grudge on his side of the fence. Well, get used to this idea, Uncle. There are certain fences the world can no longer afford.
Quite a wall through Berlin, I've heard tell.
Exactly. A fence. And who put it there? You think it's right?
In the movie, Steve Lawrence plays the ghost of Christmas past, but in this movie's case, it's more so the past of warfare, and he sort of represents the souls of soldiers who have fallen in war, but not just American soldiers, rather soldiers of all nations. It's very much sort of a brotherhood of man kind of message.
You talk like the AEF. What's your name?
I'm all the AEFs. Also BEFs. The Poilus, the Huns, the Ruskies, etc. Gallipoli, the Crimea, even Waterloo, if you care to go back that far. You get the picture, Chief? I'm all of them. I'm the one who rallied around the flag. Any flag. All flags. See what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no names and all names, huh? You know, I haven't heard that one since the radio programs in the 30s. Your name is Joe, Tony, Izzy, Pat, all one and the same. America the melting pot, right?
Wrong. I'm not getting across to you, I can see that. Who said only America, sport? I'm the dead, all the dead. We're quite a stew, you'll have to admit. Still, nameless as I am, I've got a terrific title. The Ghost of Christmas Past.
I do have to say, though, the scene where the Ghost of Christmas Past shows Daniel Grudge an incident where he visited Hiroshima on the Christmas Eve shortly after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that scene is fucking haunting.
I must tell you that when the plane flew overhead, these children looked up at the sky. Their faces were upturned to the blast. They suffered what we call flash burns. It is a term we use to describe instantaneous thermal radiation.
How badly were they burned?
They have no more faces, Commander.
Doctor, I know it's not much consolation, but at least we can hope that they're children.
Children, Commander. These girls.
Excuse me. Lieutenant,
Sir,
never seen a burn case before?
several times, sir. I was at the Bethesda Naval Hospital. I was there after Coral Sea, after Midway, after Samar. I saw a lot of burn cases.
And when you saw them, did you run?
The burn cases I saw were American sailors, Commander. They had been fighting an enemy. They weren't school children. The distinction is most subtle, sir. I'll give you that. But by God, there is a difference.
What about the kids at Pearl Harbor who looked up toward the sky? Or Malayan kids? Or Chinese kids? Sympathize all you want, Lieutenant, but keep your perspective. The President of the United States found it necessary to drop that bomb because there would have been 500,000 American casualties and a couple of million Japanese dead had he not dropped it.
In the film, Pat Hingle, who people might recognize as Commissioner Gordon from the Tim Burton / Joel Schumacher Batman series, plays the Ghost of Christmas Present. And the scene with the Ghost of Christmas Present, where he shows Daniel the war refugees, that scene is still powerful and still relevant today. Some may argue even more so.
Displaced persons. Today, more than 20 years after...
Quite a few of them. Still around. The barbed wire set.
How can you eat like this when you know that they're right there staring at you?
Why not?
Oh, it takes a special breed to stuff himself in front of
You
starting.
hit the point there, old boy. You really did. Well, it takes a special breed indeed. But you see, I don't happen to be a breed, Mr. Grudge. I'm a ghost. I don't have a heart, I don't have a soul, no nerve endings, no brain center. I'm just a reflection. But then I've already told you that. Shall I now tell you how many times you've stuffed yourself while 2/3 of the world starved in a cage? Yeah. Throw 'em a bone.
Don't you talk to me like that. I have feelings. Nothing on this earth can force me to eat while starving people watch me.
Watching makes all the difference, what? You never saw them while tearing into your mashed potatoes. They weren't actually there when you buttered your bread.
The film also has Robert Shaw, who most people would recognize as Captain Quint from Jaws, as the Ghost of Christmas Future. And then you have Peter Sellers, who almost steals the movie as a character simply referred to as the Imperium Me, who appears in the scene where the Ghost of Christmas Future shows Daniel Grudge the possible post-apocalyptic future where the world ended in nuclear conflict, and Daniel witnesses a kangaroo court, and the Imperial Me is the judge. And the speech that he gives to what is basically his cult is frighteningly prescient even to this day.
The Imperial Me. The Imperial Me. And this is the non-government of the Me people. Now, why don't we just relax and get nice and cozy? The first item on today's agenda is this business. If the people from down yonder and the people from across river wanted to come in here and talk about what they call our mutual problems, our common differences. Now, they want to talk about our problems. They want to debate about solutions until somehow they get their problems solved. They want to waste our time. They want us to commit ourselves to that kind of surrender.
They're insane.
Now then, they don't come out in so many words and say that they want to take us over. They're too clever for that. But that's what they want. They want to take over us, individual me. And if we let them seep in here from down yonder and cross river, if we let these do-gooders, these bleeding hearts, propagate their insidious doctrine of involvement among us, then, my dear friend, my beloved me, we's in trouble.
But yeah, I recommend A Carol for Another Christmas. It is very, very political, and if that's not your thing, then you probably won't enjoy this, and it's also very on the nose with its politics, so depending on where you stand politically, might affect your enjoyment of the film. And also, the ending of the film is not really an uplifting ending. Yes, it does imply that Daniel Grudge has changed his mind on certain things, but he's also just one person, and you don't know if this bleak vision of the future that he's shown can be averted or not. Ultimately, that's up to all of us. So, this is not an upbeat and uplifting Christmas movie. Ultimately, the film is very bleak. It's not nihilistic because there is some hope in the movie, but it is still a very bleak film. Now, a lot of people criticized the film for its bleakness, and apparently Rod Serling was deeply affected by the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which happened the year prior, as well as the US's involvement in the Vietnam War, and that might have influenced the bleakness of this film. And ultimately, I think this film is actually really true to the themes of the original Charles Dickens novel. While the novel, A Christmas Carol, wasn't overtly political, it was ultimately a story about how the Christmas spirit is really about how we treat our fellow man, and that's sort of the same message here, only more on a global level, rather than a personal level like it was in the original story. But yeah, that was my review on A Carol for Another Christmas, and bye.